All right, former President Trump showed the ultimate grit, heading into hostile territory not once, but twice in 1 week, and showing us all why he is the true uniter-in-chief. This despite the fact that for decades, the Democrat Party has enjoyed more than 90% of the African-American vote and a supermajority of the Latino vote as well. For as long as I can remember, these were simply facts that were accepted. Black voters, by and large, would pull the lever for the Democrat regardless of the individual candidate or their track record. The rule of thumb was that Republican candidates shouldn't even bother campaigning in predominantly black and Latino neighborhoods, while Democrats took photo ops, gave speeches, and then, of course, sprinkled crumbs from their overindulging tables into these communities. The Democrat elites, eternally concerned about the struggles of the lower-income working families, they peddled lip service and promises of morsels from their feasts, much like royalty throwing their scraps to the impoverished and the needy. For the past 60 or 70 years, as long as poor stayed poor and they were dependent on their government for everything, then that voting bloc was secure, and Democrat politicians knew they didn't need to earn it. But then a meteor struck the earth. An unforeseen force of nature took the political world literally by storm, turned it on its head. That meteor was Donald Trump, arguably the most unconventional politician ever to seek the Oval Office. And Trump's not just unconventional. Let's be honest. He's authentic, and yeah, he's bodacious. He scoffs at traditional mores and political norms. He doesn't just refuse to read the book on how to campaign. He burns it, and then he rewrites it. And that brings me back to what I alluded to earlier. In the past week, Trump has done something Joe Biden would never do, and he did it twice. He ventured into pastures unknown to speak with Americans whose votes matter just as much as anyone else. The latest example was at the Libertarian convention, and here was his message to them, despite knowing they may not be his biggest fans.
The fact is, we should not be fighting each other. If Joe Biden gets back in, there will be no more liberty for anyone in our country. Combined with us in a partnership, we're asking that of the Libertarians. We must work together. Combine with us. You have to combine with us. We cannot give crooked Joe Biden 4 more years.
Now, in spite of the boos, Trump plowed through with that speech because he knows that speaking with all Americans is what a true leader really does. And Trump's fight for every American and every vote doesn't end there. Trump waded into the waters of deep blue New York City to court minority voters. Now, the Bronx is where he was. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I first saw it, where Biden won that county in 2020 with more than 83% of the vote. But still, Trump showed up. Even though the electorate is very diverse and it's opinionated, historically, it's been fairly predictable and to a large extent very loyal.
It doesn't matter whether you're black or brown or white or whatever the hell color you are. It doesn't matter. We are all Americans, and we're going to pull together as Americans.
Now, obviously, Trump's charismatic. He's funny, and he's an absolute master of publicity, often making you wonder about some of his outlandish comments, but he all too often has the press corps eating out of the palm of his hand. Establishment media doesn't even recognize that although they may be putting their negative bent, they're still covering him. They're still talking about Donald Trump. If nothing else, Trump's given new meaning to the old adage, all press is good press. However, President Trump wasn't just a show pony. Yeah, he could utilize his fortune and his fame and the press to his advantage, but he was also a workhorse. President Trump's been breaking the mold as far as politicians go for years now by making promises and actually keeping them. He said he would build a wall, and he did. It may not have been completed, but certainly not for a lack of trying. He promised the world would respect us, and they did. He promised a robust economy, and we saw one of the strongest in our history. We weren't involved in endless wars, and our enemies were far from emboldened. Donald J. Trump did his job. He put the average hardworking American first. He put our nation first. And he didn't back down to China, to Russia, Iran, or anyone for that matter. He honored our servicemen, and he honored our service women. He backed our police and he supported law and order. The most impoverished of neighborhoods, they saw investments through opportunity zones, and minorities from blacks to Hispanics to women, they all saw their respective wages rise higher and faster than ever. Donald Trump figured out that just being himself, speaking plainly, as he would on a construction site amongst contractors, and with his dad growing up, and he combining that with a relentless work ethic to achieve his goals, he knew that he would be one of the best presidents in American history. President Trump actually worked with and hired tons of minorities over his lifetime. And he figured out something that Democrat elites never bothered to figure out, or even to think about for that matter, that black voters care about the same things as white voters, and that it's much less about race and much more about the quality of their lives. Donald Trump relates to every constituency because he sees them as people, not a specific race or agenda, not a voting bloc, and certainly not a pawn in the game of power and money. The reality is that Donald Trump is special because, yeah, he's a billionaire and he's famous, and of course, he's a former president. But at his core, he's a very decent human being and a normal guy. He says what he means, and he means what he says. And that has the left terrified. Why else would they tear down our legal system with lawfare, invent fake conspiracy stories of espionage with Russians, or fake claims of insurrection? Because Donald Trump let the cat out of the bag. And little by little, the traditional, guaranteed voters for the Democrats, they're shaking their heads and wondering why they were so easily fooled. For the first time in my lifetime, a Republican candidate for president is likely to get close to 20% of the black vote, and I dare say maybe even more. Trump sees them, he understands them, and he speaks with them, not at them. You won't hear Trump telling them this.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
You won't hear Trump fear-mongering and claiming something absurd like the Ku Klux Klan is coming for them. That's not hyperbole either. I know you all remember when Joe Biden said this. It was just, 7 or 8 days ago.
You started college just as George Floyd was murdered, and there was a reckoning on race. It's natural to wonder if democracy you hear about actually works for you. What is democracy? If black men are being killed in the street, what is democracy? You have to be 10 times better than anyone else to get a fair shot.
Trump understands the desire for a better life and for themselves and for their posterity. He knows that minority communities can never attain it by depending on the government and phony politicians. Trump also understands that being American unites all of us, and it overshadows the individual differences we have that make all of us unique. Patriotism and a sense of community built our country, and Trump understands that by putting the nation as a whole first and not letting the government pick the winners and losers, that all citizens benefit. Now, it may sound like a cliche, but Trump and I both believe that we should be judged on the content of our character, not the color of our skin. That there is no substitute for hard work, and everyone, and I mean everyone, deserves the same opportunities to succeed. Donald Trump proved he could make life better with opportunity, education, a level playing field, and hope. And people of every color and every creed believe that he will do it again.